We are told the Sith are evil, a monolith of malevolence stretching back 7,000 years, culminating in the cackling tyranny of Palpatine. This is the story the Jedi tell, the story the Republic tells. It is a lie of omission so vast it borders on criminal negligence. The truth is far more tragic. The Sith were not a single ideology. They were an ecosystem, a philosophical biodiversity that spanned millennia. From isolationist theocracies and meritocratic reformists to ethical capitalists and self-annihilating nihilists. And this diversity was not lost to time. It was systematically exterminated, murdered from without by a Jedi Order that refused to distinguish between an empire and a species, and murdered from within by Darth Bane, who strangled his own culture to ensure only the most toxic strain survived. Today we excavate the graveyard, we catalog the dead, we ask, what was lost when the Sith were reduced to a lineage of two? Welcome back to the archives. We are Compendium Queries, and today we mourn a civilization. Chapter 1. The Primordial Soup, before the Dark Lords. To understand what was lost, we must first understand what existed before the fall. Before there were Dark Lords, before there was a Sith Order, there was simply a people, the Sith species, red-skinned, Force-sensitive, and utterly alien to the Republic that would one day try to erase them from existence. This was not the galaxy's nightmare. This was a civilization. They worshipped gods like Typhagim, the left-handed god. They practiced alchemy not to conquer but to understand. They were xenophobic, certainly, brutal in their caste hierarchies, but they were not imperialists. Their wars were internal, squabbles over territory on their own homeworlds. The galaxy beyond was simply irrelevant. The Kasai were the thinkers, priests and archivists who studied death, spirit, and metaphysics of their own existence. They did not seek to rule the stars, they sought to understand the black space between them. The Masasi were the defenders. Fierce, yes. Deadly, absolutely. But they viewed violence as devotion, not ambition. They were the immune system of the body politic, reacting to threats, not creating them. This was the Control Group, a dark side society that existed for millennia without a Jedi Order to define itself against. Proof that dark did not automatically mean galactic menace. They were a hermit kingdom, content, insular, and about to be colonized. Chapter 2. The Colonial Infection. The Exiles arrive. In approximately 6900 BBY, everything changed. The 100-year darkness had ended. A faction of Jedi who dared to experiment with forbidden alchemy, the creation of life through the Force, had been crushed by their Orthodox brethren, stripped of their ranks, stripped of their weapons, exiled to the furthest reaches of space. These were not Sith. They were humans. Dark Jedi, yes. Fallen, certainly. But their culture, their neurosis, their burning hatred for the Jedi Order, these were imports. Alien viruses about to be injected into an isolated population with no immunity. When Ajunta Paul's feet touched Korriban's sand, the Kasai did not see invaders, they saw gods. These strangers possessed technology the Sith lacked, starships, energy swords, a mastery of the Force that dwarfed even their greatest priests. Kasai fell to their knees. They named Paul and his followers Jin Ari, Dark Lords. This was the first synthesis, the moment when the Sith species became the Sith Order. But it was not a merger of equals, it was a colonization. The Exiles brought the lightsaber, but also the concept of the code. They brought galactic ambition, but also pathological vendetta against the Jedi. The purebloods contributed to the aesthetics, the red skin, the hieroglyphs, the alchemy, but the Exiles contributed the poison, the idea that the Sith existed to destroy the Jedi. A people who had been content for millennia were now conscripts in someone else's war. Thousands of years later, Revan would encounter Paul's spirit in his tomb on Korriban, and the first Dark Lord confessed something remarkable: regret. He lamented that the Exiles had destroyed the purity of the Sith people, turned them into a weapon for a grudge they never asked to carry. Even the founder of the Order came to see the original sin. Chapter 3. The Roads Not Taken. Sith diversity in the Old Republic. For the next 5,000 years, the Sith did not calcify into a single doctrine. They exploded into diversity. Without a rule of two to constrain them, Sith Lords acted as independent evolutionary agents, developing radically different interpretations of power, governance, and morality. Consider the schism that shattered the Golden Age. Ludo Kresh versus Nagasato. This was not a mere power struggle, it was a philosophical war for the soul of the Empire. Kresh was the conservative. He believed the Sith Empire was already the pinnacle of civilization. Why risk it? The galaxy beyond was dangerous, full of the Jedi who had exiled the original Dark Lords. Expansion was suicide. Isolation was survival. Sato was the progressive. Stagnation, he argued, was death. The Sith would rot from within if they did not test themselves against a peer adversary. He wanted war. He manufactured it, staging false flag attacks to scare the Council into supporting his invasion. Sato won the debate, and for a brief, terrible moment, he seemed to win the war. But his overreach invited the counter-invasion that would annihilate the Sith homeworlds. In hindsight, Kresh was prophetically correct. Expansion was suicide. The conservatives' caution could have preserved the civilization. Instead, the radicals' ambition doomed one. Millennia later, a different reformist emerged. Darth Malgus saw the Empire bleeding talent through its obsession with human and pureblood supremacy. Aliens were treated as slaves, not citizens. Malgus's answer was radical meritocracy. "I have done what so many Sith pretend to do, but never really achieve," he declared. "I have broken my chains." This was not a rejection of the Sith code, it was its logical conclusion. If strength is the only virtue, then the strong should rule regardless of bloodline. His relationship with Alina Daru, his Twi'lek partner, humanized this philosophy. She was not his slave, she was his partner. A living repudiation of the Empire's xenophobic foundations. And yet, in the end, even Malgus could not fully escape the gravity of tradition. He killed her, not out of cruelty, but out of the belief that attachment was weakness. He tried to reform the Sith and was partly reformed by them. His rebellion failed. The cosmopolitan Sith state that might have rivaled the Republic's diversity was crushed by reactionaries who feared change more than they feared stagnation. But not all divergence trended toward improvement. Around 2000 BBY, a fallen Jedi named Phanius became Darth Ruin, and he descended into pure solipsism. There is no passion, there is solely obsession. There is no knowledge, there is solely conviction. There is no purpose, there is solely will. There is nothing, only me. This was not Sith philosophy. This was the Sith code collapsing into a black hole of narcissism. To Ruin, other beings were not real, not even his own followers. They were non-player characters in the simulation of his will. This made long-term governance impossible. He was eventually assassinated by acolytes who realized that a leader who denies your existence makes for a poor emperor. His solipsism catalyzed the new Sith Wars, 1,000 years of chaos, but it also demonstrated the range of the Sith experiment, from Malgus's idealistic reform to Ruin's terminal narcissism. This was a living laboratory of philosophy, and it was about to be sterilized. Chapter 4. The Great Filter. Bane and the Rule of Two. By the end of the new Sith Wars, the Sith had reorganized under Lord Khan and his Brotherhood of Darkness. Khan was a former Jedi himself, and he brought a radical idea to the Order: egalitarianism. All are equal in the Brotherhood of Darkness. Khan abolished the title of Darth, viewing it as a symbol of the ego-driven rivalries that had torn Ruin's empire apart. He sought to collectivize the Sith, creating a ruling council where power was shared. Was it inefficient? Perhaps. Did it lack the singular vision of a tyrant? Certainly. But it was a functioning Sith civilization. Specialists could coexist, alchemists and generals and assassins, all contributing to a greater whole. It was sustainable. Darth Bane looked at all of this and saw only weakness. To Bane, the dark side was a finite resource. Shared, it became diluted. Spread among 1,000 Sith, it made 1,000 mediocrities. Only by concentrating it in one vessel could it reach its true potential. Bane did not challenge the Brotherhood openly. He manipulated Khan into self-destruction. He convinced him to deploy the Thought Bomb, an ancient Sith ritual that would trap the souls of everyone within its blast radius in eternal torment. Khan believed he was winning. He was committing suicide and taking his entire civilization with him. In one instant, Bane erased the entire ecosystem. The military strategists, the alchemists, the reformists, the traditionalists, the progressives, all of them, gone, not defeated in battle, but murdered by their own brother to clear the path for something purer, one to embody power, one to crave it. This is the rule of two. Bane believed he was saving the Sith. He was performing a lobotomy. Chapter 5. The Consequences. What died with the Brotherhood? Zana was not a warrior, she was a sorceress. Her skills harkened back to the ancient Kisai, to the sorcerers of Tund. She represented the arcane, mystical strain of Sith philosophy. She won her duel with Bane. She proved her path was viable. But because of the rule of two, she could not teach her methods to anyone except her single apprentice, Darth Cognus. And Cognus was a precognitive, not a sorceress. She had no aptitude for Zana's arts. High Sith sorcery died with Zana. The rule of two meant that if a single link in the chain failed to pass on a skill, that skill was gone forever. The most devastating blow came from Darth Gravid, a rule of two lord who began to question whether absolute devotion to the dark side was a form of insanity. He tried to synthesize Jedi compassion with Sith philosophy. He could not hold both truths in his head. It broke him, and in his madness, he decided that the only way forward was to destroy the past. He started burning the archives. By the time his apprentice killed him, Gravid had destroyed the majority of the Order's collected wisdom. Knowledge of essence transfer was lost. Later, Sith like Plagueis and Sidious would spend decades painfully rediscovering secrets that had once been common knowledge. Other strains tried to survive. Darth Millennial rejected the rule of two entirely, advocating for a return to the wider order of prophets and acolytes. He fled, founded the Prophets of the Dark Side on Droman Kas, but Bane's ideology labeled him a heretic. His line was quarantined to a fringe cult, another road not taken. Chapter 6. The Good Sith. Proof of what could have been. The most damaging lie of the Baneite Sith and the Jedi is that the dark side inevitably leads to megalomania and psychosis. The historical record contains significant outliers, Sith who proved the ideology could be ethical. Darth Vectivus was a mining director who discovered his force sensitivity later in life. He became a Sith out of intellectual curiosity, not trauma. When he realized the dark side energies of his asteroid were harming his employees, he shut down operations, an act of rational self-interest or compassion, perhaps both. He died of old age in his own bed, surrounded by people who loved him. He conquered nothing. He murdered no master. He simply lived according to a code of rational self-interest and ethical business practice. Darth Mar was the antithesis of selfish Sith. As head of the sphere of defense, he was driven by duty, not desire. "I will not let the Empire die," he declared. He used the Sith code to strengthen the civilization, not himself. When the Sith Emperor threatened all life, Mar committed the ultimate heresy. He allied with the Jedi Grand Master to stop him. Duty over dogma, survival over pride. After death, Mar retained his identity as a spirit, something most Sith never achieve. His dedication to a cause greater than himself allowed him something rare: peace. Deep in the archives lay the teachings of Keleth a Sith who concluded that obsession with passion and conflict was self-defeating. True power, he argued, comes from control and inner peace, not uncontrolled rage. He was executed as a heretic, his teaching suppressed, because the Sith leadership actively eliminated any strain that drifted too close to sanity. Chapter 7. Jedi Complicity, the other executioners. The radicalization of the Sith cannot be blamed only on Bane. The Jedi Order's policy of total war, their refusal to accept surrender, created an external pressure cooker that selected for the most extreme survivors. After Naga Sato's defeat, Chancellor Palpatine, with explicit Jedi support, ordered the invasion of Sith space, not to occupy, to eradicate. This was not a war against combatants, it was a targeted attempt to wipe out the Sith species and culture entirely. This event, the Sith Holocaust, justified everything that came after. Vitiate used the legitimate fear of Jedi-led annihilation to lead survivors into the unknown regions, forging them into the weapons seen in the Great Galactic War. Had the Jedi offered an armistice, Vitiate's rise might never have happened. Throughout galactic history, the Jedi maintained a de facto policy that Sith Lords were irredeemable. At Ruusan, Lord Hoth sought complete annihilation. There were no prisoner camps, only pyres. Because Sith knew that defeat meant execution, they fought with suicidal ferocity. This solidified the belief that peace is a lie, not because it's philosophically true, but because the Jedi made it true. A Sith, like Vectivus or Mar, would have been hunted just as ruthlessly as nihilists. The Jedi used Sith as a synonym for evil, rather than acknowledging it was a philosophical alignment with diverse expressions. They eliminated the moderates and ensured only the extremists survive. Chapter 8: The Last Remnant. Palpatine as Toxic Concentrate. Sheev Palpatine did not emerge from a vacuum. He was an evolutionary endpoint of a 7,000-year filtration process. The Jedi killed the open Sith, the numerous Sith, the Sith who could build civilizations. Bane killed the cooperative Sith, the specialized Sith, the Sith who could do anything other than scheme and murder. Palpatine contained the imperialism of Sato, the solipsism of Ruin, the cunning of Bane, but he was stripped of Mar's duty, Vectivus's ethics, Malgus's vision. He was not the apex of the philosophy, he was the tumor that survived the chemotherapy. This is what the Sith became, not a civilization, not a philosophy, a weapon, a conspiracy of two that existed solely to inflict maximum suffering on a galaxy it could never actually govern. When Darth Vader threw the Emperor down the reactor shaft, he did not just kill a tyrant, he killed the last mangled remnant of a culture that had once been diverse, vibrant, and terrifyingly complex. 7,000 years of philosophy, dozens of competing schools, hundreds of experiments in governance and metaphysics, all of it reduced to a single shriveled corpse falling into a reactor. The Sith didn't die because they were weak. They died because they murdered every part of themselves that could have lived in peace. The philosophical graveyard. We speak of Sith as a monolith because the victors wrote the history. The Jedi needed monsters to justify their crusades. The Baneite survivors needed to believe they were the true Sith to justify their fratricide. But the archives remember, somewhere in the Korriban tombs, in the forgotten corners of the galaxy, the ghosts of 1,000 philosophies whisper. They speak of roads not taken, of civilizations that might have rivaled the Republic, of Sith who died of old age, surrounded by friends, of a species that existed for 25,000 years before anyone called them evil. The Sith were not a monolith. They were a philosophical graveyard, and we are still burying them. This is the Archivist, and in this galaxy, the past is never truly dead, only buried. Like and subscribe for more deep dive videos into our favorite fictional universe.